So we've had some big fight announcements recently. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kelvin Gastelum, Manan Fiorot versus Namajunas, Taila Santos versus Erin Blanchfeild, as well as Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith, all been announced recently, as well as a few other smaller fights, which I'm going to be going over in today's video, giving my early prediction and breakdown of each of these fights, and just covering all of the news. Starting off with the most recent fight announcement, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kelvin Gastelum is announced for September 16th. That's the co-main event of the Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso fight night card at the T-Mobile Arena on Mexican Independence Day. Looks like they're really trying to stack this card full of talent, make it a real stacked card at the T-Mobile Arena as a fight night as well. Not often that you see the fight nights headlined by title fights, but Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso is headlining this fight night event, and obviously the co-main event will be Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kelvin Gastelum, which got announced today. A really good fight in the welterweight division, a bit of an interesting fight. Not what everyone was expecting, but that's what we've got. Obviously Kelvin Gastelum moving down from the middleweight division, coming off that decision win over Chris Curtis. Obviously before that had a bit of a layoff. And then Shavkat Rakhmonov coming off a really impressive win over Jeff Neal, looked really good in that fight, got that third round submission. And has really been on a roll in the UFC recently. He's got all finishes, undefeated guy, and looks really good in his last few fights. And I'm going to pick him to win this fight by a TKO in the second or third round against Kelvin Gastelum. Um, I just think he's better everywhere. I don't see a real easy path for Kelvin to win. He's just got to try and make this a dog scrap, make it into a war, and just make it a tough, gritty fight for Shavkat. But even in the Neal fight, we've seen Shavkat Rakhmonov can stand in the pocket and trade and land punches on his opponent in close quarters and get hit and still take those shots. So I'm not going to trust Kelvin Gastelum, even in a brawl, to KO Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's shown a good chin against Jeff Neal, who I think hits a lot harder than Kelvin Gastelum. And I also think Kelvin Gastelum is going to be depleted going down to the welterweight division. Obviously, he hasn't fought there in a while, since I think it was about 2015, 16. Before that, did miss weight a few times. That's why he was forced to go up. So I just don't like this move for him. I think he is a natural. He's a 170 sized guy. He's got a bit of fat on him. Not a lean guy by any means. But that it's just weird. It's like you can't get that weight off. It's like a DC. He's like the DC of middleweight, swapping between middleweight and welterweight. Arguably doing better when he's heavy, maybe. Like that's what seems to happen with Gastelum. Obviously, he just hasn't been able to really make 170 cleanly and look really good in that division for quite a while. So I'm not going to trust him coming back down to welterweight. I think he's going to look a bit drained, a bit depleted, unless he takes this weight cut really seriously and actually shreds some body fat. Because if he just tries to cut from his natural weight and just cut water weight, he's going to be really drained coming into this fight. But if he does come into this fight real lean, shredded, which we've never seen him, but if he does, then that could be a promising thing for you to maybe not pick him to get finished. But I think regardless of what Gastelum turns up, I just don't think he's any better than he's not better than Shavkat in any areas of MMA. Shavkat clearly has got the speed advantage. I'm confident he's got the power advantage. We can't really say with the cardio, but Shavkat's cardio has looked really good in his recent fights. Obviously, the grappling you've got to go with Shavkat, submissions, takedowns, all of that. He just is a better fighter than Kelvin Gastelum everywhere. So it does kind of beg the question: why is this fight happening? Why isn't Shavkat fighting up the rankings and Kelvin Gastelum fighting a really lower ranked welterweight coming into his welterweight return? He's ranked like number 11 or 12, I think, in the middleweight division. So it's kind of weird for him to now be getting number 6 down a division. So that's a jump up in competition and also going down a division. So he's not even ranked a welterweight. So it's a bit weird to see. Um, but yeah, I just don't think this is a good fight for him. I think we should have been seeing like a Neil Magny or a Kevin Holland or something like that, just a lower ranked, decently known name if he's gonna fight in the rankings. Maybe a Michelle Pereira or a Michael Chiesa, one of those kind of names. But I think the Shavkat Rakhmonovs of the division are just a bit too much for him at this point. Obviously on the Shavkat side as well, it's a bit interesting why he's taking this fight. It's like I wouldn't call it a lose-lose situation. Obviously, if he wins this fight, he's got a well-known name on his resume and another win to add to his undefeated record. But if he loses this fight, it's disastrous, to be honest. Like, there's really He's expected to win this fight. He should be a big favourite. I'm thinking he's going to end up being like a minus 400. I'm thinking that's what the odds I think are going to close at. So if he does lose to Kelvin Gastelum, loses to the guy coming from the middleweight division, which is notoriously known to be not that good and not that talented, or like not very deep in at the top of that division. The talent really falls off a cliff after Izzy, Rob, and Cannonier, to be honest. Like, you got guys like Strickland in there. Hamzat's coming up, but we can't call him a middleweight right now. Like, there's not a lot of. I'm not counting Pereira, he's at light heavyweight now. So there's really not a lot of talent at middleweight, and now you're going down to welterweight, which is just a vastly more skilled division with heaps more fighters and a lot more depth in the top 15. I'm not convinced that like the 10 to 15 ranked welterweights could probably just go up to middleweight, put on some size, and would probably be top five contenders quite comfortably, with the exception of probably a Neil Magny. I just don't think the skill level at middleweight is that high. I think it's going to be a rude awakening for Kelvin Gastelum when he comes back down to 170. I think the competition is a lot better than when he left it, and I think the competition is also a lot better than that he's facing at middleweight. You can't I could run through the welterweight division, and I wouldn't need a full hand to count the amount of guys that would beat that would lose to Chris Curtis. I don't think Chris Curtis, who Kelvin Gastelum's recent opponent, who we went to a close decision with, I don't think you can give me five names in the rankings at welterweight that would lose to Curtis. You're looking at guys like maybe a Magny, maybe a Chiesa, maybe a Brady with the power from Curtis, but apart from that, I just don't see anyone else. I see everyone else in that division being better than Chris Curtis, so I think you're jumping from Chris Curtis in a close decision to Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I don't think it's going to go well for you. So I'm picking Shavkat to win this fight by a second or third round TKO. I think he's going to just be using the range on Kelvin. I think he's going to be popping him with straight shots, landing some head kicks. In the clinch as well, he's going to do some very good work in this matchup, I believe. The knees in the clinch against Gastelum are open and damaging as well when you can land them. Kelvin's got a bit of a softer body, a bit more padding there, but does have a tendency to get hurt to the body. We've seen that in a few of his fights. So I think I can see a TKO stemming off knees in the clinch that hurt Gastelum, and then he finishes him with a flurry of punches. I don't think he went knocked out. Kelvin's shown a pretty good chin in the past, but I think he's going to get TKO'd. I think he'll get dropped. He'll come back up, maybe get dropped again, ground and pounded a little bit, and then the ref's just going to step in. So I see him winning this fight by a TKO, and I don't see Kelvin Gastelum having too much success in this matchup. I think it's going to be a pretty one-sided win for Shavkat, and he'll move to 18-0. And then I think he can look into the top five of the welterweight division. Moving on though, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. This has been announced for August 26th. That's the Singapore card, main evented by a massacre on paper. Max Holloway versus Korean Zombie. Just had to mention that again. But yeah, this is not confirmed whether it's the co-main or the third fight on the card, because another matchup, Erin Blanchfeild versus Taila Santos, has also been made for that card, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But back to Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. It's the rematch that no one really needed to happen. Not something that I think a lot of people are going to be clamoring around the bits for, trying to really have a good look at this matchup and break it down and be super excited and hyped. When you're coming around to this August 26th card, you're going to look at the card and you're going to be like, this is a good card. We got the retirement of Zombie, probably Max Holloway, Tyler Santos versus Erin Blanchfield's a number one contender fight. Like, some good names on this, some fun unranked fights. Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith. Why is this being made? Like, it's a good fight, don't get me wrong. And if they two hadn't fought already, I would have no problem with this. But just the fact that it's a rematch, not for a belt, not a close first fight, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense in my opinion. Um, Anthony Smith did not look good in his last few fights. Obviously, lost dominantly decision to who was it? Johnny Walker lost a dominant decision to Walker. Got picked apart in that fight. Really didn't have many moments. Couldn't check a leg kick to save his life. Before that, lost to Ankalaev, I think it was. I'm not sure if there was anyone between there. But yeah, lost to Ankalaev. I forget whether he got finished. I think he did get finished in that fight. Before that, and then before that, it was the Ryan Spann fight, I believe. I think he did beat Ryan Spann, obviously. But Ryan Spann, since then, I think he's looked a lot better than Anthony Smith, and I am gonna pick him. I'm going to pick Ryan Spann to win this fight by a TKO. I think the blueprint has really been set out on how to beat Anthony Smith. I think he really got to. He's going to hammer those leg kicks. Spann's a big guy, big powerful guy. He's hammer those leg kicks, and I think he'll be more patient on the feet, measure distance on the feet, land those power shots on Smith, who's got a deteriorating chin. We're seeing that unfold. And I even in like Smith's a better grappler than Spann, but like Smith's not a strong guy anymore. He's losing his kind of real man strength, and he's coming into his late 30s. And unlike Yoel Romero or Glover Teixeira, he's not looking like a guy that's going to fight into his 40s. That doesn't look like that'll happen with him. I could see him if he's losing this fight. I could see him retire. Um, he did look like he was actually going to briefly retire against Johnny Walker, and I think he said he was thinking about it, but his corner told him not to. And I think that's probably wise, even though it was a pretty shocking performance. I think you always want to go out on a win. He's not on a disastrous losing streak, not like a BJ Penn or an Anderson Silva, um, or I'm trying to think of another example, but not like one of those, or Tony Ferguson, not like one of those guys that's just leaving it too long and just has no place in the sport anymore. But I don't think he's got a place in the rankings anymore. And I don't think he's the skill level of Ryan Spann at this point. He hasn't really shown that real grit in his last fights. He was probably a few kicks away from getting TKO'd by Johnny Walker due to leg kicks. Um, Hurt his leg, injured his leg in the Ankalaev fight, just got taken down and dominated. Ankalaev, though, like, that's not a terrible win to have. Just on the trajectory that he's going, I just don't see him winning this fight. Spann, last fight got submitted by Nikita Krylov, but he was doing okay in that fight. He was scrabbling all right, which does give me confidence that he's not just going to get dominated in the grappling. Before that, got a vicious KO over Dominic Reyes, but just like Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes is a guy that's really on a slide, worse than Anthony Smith, obviously. Reyes isn't booked. I don't think he is, but I honestly wouldn't mind it a Reyes versus an Anthony Smith. I think that could have been a better matchup, and then do like a Ryan Spann versus a who could you do? Maybe a Ozdemir or something like that. Ozdemir's booked now, but something like that. I don't think Spann deserves a real jump up the rankings, which he is getting. I don't know what Ryan Spann is ranked. I'm going to check it now. But Anthony Smith's ranked just outside the top five, I believe. Bear with me. Um, but yeah, this is a jump up the rankings. Coming off a loss as well is quite unusual. Um, so I'm not sure really what the thought was behind this. Giving him that jump up the rankings, especially in a rematch, which just isn't that exciting. Like got submitted by Ryan Spann. Sorry, got Ryan Spann got submitted by Nikita Krylov in the first round of their fight. So nothing really says that like he's not on a tear right now. I'm just checking the rankings. Um, Anthony Smith is number 7. Ryan Spann is number 10. And Ryan Spann's last fight was against Nikita Krylov, who was number 5. So bit odd if I'm being completely honest. Like jump up the rankings. Oh, wait, let me just take one more quick look at the rankings. Like you could have done a Ryan Spann versus Ozdemir's ranked number 8. That could have been a bit better. Maybe a Paul Craig or fight down, fight Azamat Murzakanov, fight Khalil Roundtree, one of those guys. Jimmy Crute maybe. I don't know. Jimmy Crute doesn't deserve a jump up, but I'm just throwing out other ideas. I just don't think this was the number one fight that needed to happen in the light heavyweight division, and it's not really going to prove anything either. Um, like if you're looking at the state of the division right now, Nikita Krylov ranked number 5. That was Ryan Spann's most recent loss. Before that, he beat number like 13 ranked Dominic Reyes. Anthony Smith's not in contention anymore. He's way outside the talk of a title. So even if Ryan Spann wins this fight by knockout, it's not going to be like, geez, he's the next thing. Like he's lost before. He lost to Anthony Smith. They will be 1-on-1, and there's going to probably be questions about whether he would have won the fight. If it wasn't such an older version of Anthony Smith. So I'm not like it sounds like I'm really complaining about this fight, which I am. I'm not complaining about the fight. I don't mind the fight. I'll watch it, and I'll be intrigued by it as well. But I don't know, just maybe a bit of a thought. It's not the number one matchup that needed to happen. But yeah, back to my prediction for the fight. I'm picking Ryan Spann to win by KO. I think he'll hammer the leg kicks. He's going to land big shots on Anthony Smith's chin, which is deteriorating before our eyes. He's losing the ability to take the shots that he used to take against like Glover. Um, so yeah, I think Ryan Spence is going to I think he's got a solid reach advantage, I do believe. I'll see if I can find that just briefly. If he does have a reach advantage, though, I think he'll utilize that to great effect. Let me just check. I'm checking Big Marcel. Do they show? Does he show the reach? Uh, no, he doesn't. That's annoying. Um, but like notable wins, like he's beat Leon Kudelaba as well, Ryan Spann. Um, Anthony Smith, like he's beaten Volkan Ozdemir. He beat Shogun Hua back in the day. So yeah, I'm picking Ryan Spann to win. I think he's just going to be better. Bit hungrier in his career. I think he saw in the Krylov fight. It was a bit of a like lapse of judgment, a bit of a stupid moment that caused him to get submitted there. He kind of jumped into a triangle almost. Wasn't having too much success. Got tangled up in the grappling. Um, I'll be completely honest with you. I have not actually seen the first fight. I have not seen the first Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann fight. That was before I started watching UFC. But I will definitely go back and watch it in fight week of this fight to maybe update my prediction. But just going, I don't actually like. I'm not a big person to use first fights if they happened a while ago. Like it's like Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler. No one's using their first fight to determine that second fight. Like no one was doing that because it was ages away. Obviously, this is not as drastic of a time difference, but like this, they've both had some matchups in between. Smith's looked a lot worse since then. Spann's looked a fair bit better, so I'll pick Spann to win. Um, and yeah, that's really all I got to say. Remains to be seen whether it's the co-main or third fight on the card. I would probably lean that it's going to end up being the co-main, but I think Santos versus Blanchfeild should be co-main. But anyway, on that note, we will move on to that fight. Erin Blanchfeild versus Taila Santos, obviously, on that same card, August 26th in Singapore. Um, Another thing, sorry, with Smith and Spann is why is it in Singapore? Neither of them are Asian. But anyway, moving on. Back to Santos versus Blanchfield. Another why is this in Singapore? Neither of them are from Asia. Blanchfield's American. Santos is Brazilian. Last time I checked, those countries aren't anywhere close to Asia. But regardless, still a good fight to add on to the card. I guess Taila Santos did fight her last fight in Singapore. Got a bit of a pop from that crowd. She looked really good against Valentina Shevchenko. So maybe that's why. But anyway, as the fight goes, I'm going to be picking Erin Blanchfield to win a decision. This is going to be 3 rounds. I think her grappling is just so good. I'm really high on Erin Blanchfield's grappling. I'm high on her as a prospect. I think she is, as a young fighter, I think she's 24 years of age. She's a really promising prospect in that women's division. And I think once Shevchenko's out of the picture, I see her beating the likes of an Alexa Grasso. I see her beating the likes of probably a Manan Fiorot. I think this is actually probably her toughest fight in the division. So if she can get past this, I think it's a run to the title and beyond from there for Erin Blanchfield. Obviously, Taila Santos' strength is also in the grappling, but we just haven't seen anyone stop the takedowns of Erin Blanchfield just as we've seen it. Coming off a really good, dominant win over Jessica Andrade, who is a really strong woman in that flyweight division, to see her just take her down past the guard and submit her was very impressive to see. Before that, beat Molly McCann dominantly, who is quite a strong fighter, but not a technically good one, especially in the grappling. Taila Santos, though, coming off that loss over Valentina, but a really close and a good fight. A lot of people did think she won. I'm just going to check her record. Taila Santos 4-2 in the UFC, so she's not that experienced in the UFC. Got wins over Joanne Wood, Gillian Robertson, and Roxanne Modafferi. So she kind of got to the top, not off some big wins. She didn't beat the likes of like a Caitlin Chukagian or a Manan Fiorot, or an Alexa Grasso. So she did that. The flyweight division with this recent title win of Alexa Grasso has really opened up. And looked a lot more interesting. And some new faces emerging has really made the flyweight division, in my opinion, actually the best women's division in the sport right now. When Valentina was reigning, it was kind of like if you win a fight against anyone in the top 5, you can get a title shot. But now we're really seeing you got to work for that because right now we've got Erin Blanchfield versus Taila Santos, who's like number 2 versus number 3. And then Manan Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas as well. So it's kind of odd to think which one of those is going to secure a title shot. none of them have fought each other. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But back to the fight, I think Erin Blanchfield's going to win through the grappling. Taila Santos, very good in the grappling. That's where she had success against Valentina Shevchenko. And I think the striking, I might lean Santos, but even Erin Blanchfield looked really good against Jessica Andrade in her last fight. Obviously, Andrade was shown against Yan Xiaonan to be bit exposable, running in, rushing in. She was landing some shots on Blanchfield, but she was coming off that dominant win over Lauren Murphy, and that really made her look like a really imposing and intimidating figure in that 125 division. Um, but regardless, I just think Blanchfield is just such a good wrestler. I just don't think it's rare to see that caliber of an individual skill in a women's division. Even like Amanda Nunes is not actually. I might get a bit of hate for saying this or a bit of questioning, but I don't even think Amanda Nunes is like that technically spectacular in one area. She's got a lot of power. She's extremely strong. She's got pretty good striking, pretty good wrestling. It's kind of the same with Valentina. Is like Valentina got outstruck by Alexa Grasso in her last fight and out grappled by Taila Santos before that. So she's not the best in the division at any area. It's kind of odd. But obviously against Grasso she wrestled and against Santos she struck. So that's how she was winning fights. But went on a bit of a tangent there. I just think Erin Blanchfield is just possesses grappling different to anyone else in that division. Um, Obviously, Santos, very good grappler, very good jiu-jitsu in her own right, but I just think Blanchfield is just such a dominant grappling force with those takedowns. And I just don't see, over 3 rounds, I don't see Blanchfield getting tired. We haven't seen her cardio really falter. And Taila Santos coming off a big layoff. She might have confidence, I would say, because she did look very good against Valentina Shevchenko, but I wouldn't say she's really on a high right now. She's not coming off a win. Last time she fought was in June of 2022. So that's going to be well over a year. It's going to be over 400 days by the time this fight comes around. With his Erin Blanchfield fought in June 2022, fought in November at MSG, got that big win, and then fought in February. So she's looking a lot more active. She's looking a lot more promising right now. Santos took quite a lot of damage against Valentino in their fight, so she's had some time to recover. But I just don't think. I think on the feet it's going to be very even. You really don't see many dominations of the striking in like women's martial arts, to be honest. Apart from in that championship setting, with a title holder versus like an unexperienced contender. So I don't think Santos has not shown the striking that's going to be like she would not KO Blanchfield on the feet. I don't see that happening. Um, I just see her being a little bit better, a bit technically better on the feet, but I just see Blanchfield getting a takedown and just doing a really good job of stifling the jiu-jitsu attempts of Taila Santos. So I think she's going to win this fight by a 29-28 decision. And I think she should definitely get a title shot if she wins this. Um, Obviously beat Andrade like in her last fight. That's a really good win to have, and a win over Andrade and Santos. That should definitely get you a title shot, regardless of who wins between Valentina and Grasso. She hasn't fought either of them. Um, I could see the only thing that would probably put a spanner in the works of her getting a title shot, even with a win here, would be if Valentina beats Alexa Grasso in the rematch, and then if if Rose Namajunas beats Manan Fiorot, and that does have um, a bit of a line to it, I guess you could say. Maybe like arguably the greatest strawweight of all time in Rose, a strawweight champion, two-time strawweight champion, versus Valentina, who's one of the most dominant flyweight champions that we've seen. So I think that could be a fight that they might want to make. But apart from that, I think if Manan Fiorot wins, um, I think Blanchfield should get a title shot. And if Rose wins and Alexa Grasso wins, I also think she should get a title shot. So that's what I think of that fight. I'm thinking Blanchfield to win by decision. Um, Moving on though to some of the smaller fights, that's all. Sorry, no, Manan Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas. Almost forgot about that. That's as the co-main event of the September 2nd card in Paris, France. A really good fight here in the women's flyweight division. Rose Namajunas moving up to the flyweight division. Obviously, 2 fights against the current champion Zhang Weili and a number of contenders that are looking at title shots in that division. So she probably saw that landscape at 115 and said, I'm probably not getting a title shot anytime soon. Let's go up to flyweight and fight a contender that probably gets me a title shot if I win. So it's smart from Rose in terms of the ranking that she's got in the stakes on this fight. But in terms of the opponent, I could see her losing this matchup. It really just depends on what Rose Namajunas shows up. If the Rose Namajunas that KO'd Joanna Jędrzejczyk, or that KO'd Zhang Weili, or even the one that beat Zhang Weili over 5 rounds in the rematch, if any of those versions of Rose shows up, I can definitely see her winning this fight. But if the Rose that shows the fought Carla shows up, that unconfident, timid Rose that doesn't want to throw on the feet, and is scared to engage in things or throw anything of power and doesn't want to be getting hit, then I definitely think she's in for a rude awakening against Manan Fiorot. In France as well, Manan's going to be getting the home cheers. Rose is not going to be a fan favorite in this setting in France. And Fiorot's as well on a real tear in that division too. And she's also looking at a title shot, probably with a win as well, or if not, waiting for one as well. So I don't think she would need another fight if she wins this. Let me just check her record as well. Manan Fiorot, 5-0 in the UFC. Yep, undefeated. Beat Caitlin Chukagian, beat Tabatha Ricci, beat Jennifer Maia. So those are some really good wins to have. Rose is obviously all her wins are down at strawweight, so very notable wins there. But her last fight where she looked good was in November of 2021 as well, which is crazy to think. It's been that long. She's been out for ages too. Last time she fought was in May, so it's going to be how long is that going to be? Like 450 days ish by the time she returns. I don't like that for her. That's inactivity. I never like to see inactivity with a fighter that has already probably reached their peak. I don't like to see a fighter who I think's reached their potential in the sport. She won her belts, she got her money, she got her fame. Um, she secured her legacy, although slightly tarnished it against Carla Esparza. But 1 second, I'm a bit thirsty. I think she's secured her legacy down at 115, but I just think this move up to flyweight is a sign that she's not. I don't think she's taking her career as seriously. I could be misreading that. Maybe she is taking her career seriously, and maybe she thinks she's got a really good shot at winning that flyweight belt. Usually for fighters that have already won titles, moving up a division when you're not the active champion, most of the time shows to me that you're kind of done at the highest level, really putting in those hours, putting in that grit and that effort to cut down. She's not even a big strawweight, so it's not like she's struggling to make weight. She could probably make a 105 atomweight division if they made that. She's a pretty small girl. Manan Fiorot's a pretty big girl in that flyweight division as well. So I definitely see her being outstrengthed and outsized in this matchup. We saw Rose Namajunas in a grappling match against Jillian Robertson, got submitted in under a minute. It's kind of dumb to use grappling matches to determine MMA fights, but Jillian Robertson was a 125 at that time, now moved down to 115 and didn't look good in her last fight against Tabatha Ricci, who Manan Fiorot did beat. So some really weird kind of complicated MMA math there. You're using MMA math of Manan Fiorot beat Tabatha Ricci beat Jillian Robertson beat Rose Namajunas, but in a grappling match. So you can question that all you want. I'm not going to be using that exact kind of thing to um, determine my prediction in this fight, but I just think Manan's going to be a lot physically stronger. And even on the feet, she'll have a reach advantage. She should, being the bigger fighter, being the heavier fighter, I'd imagine she'd have a reach advantage. Just the physicality, I think, is what's going to get it done for her. But again, I will say if you tell me again, I said this with the Garn versus Spivak fight. I said if you in that fight, I said if you can get a time machine and you can go forward in time and tell me that it's going to be a stand up fight, and that Garn's going to show up good with good takedown defense, I'll tell you that Garn's going to win all day. Just like in this fight, if you tell me that it's going to be a stand up fight and Rose Namajunas is hungry and it's the same Rose that fought Ioane and Jacek and KO'd then I'll be saying Rose all day. But again, the way she's just looked in her last fight, and the attitude and the inactivity, the time off that she's taken, just doesn't give me a lot of confidence to pick her in this matchup. Um, I might change my mind when it comes around though. I really want to see. This is one of the few fights where you want to watch the fighters kind of interview, watch the fighters how they're looking on. I don't think they do embedded for fight nights, but just in the pre-fight kind of build up, how she's kind of talking about this fight, and I'd love to know her motivation. There's no chance I get an interview with Rose Namajunas, but if any of you can if any of you know Rose, or if any of you know Pat Barry, then could you reach out and ask them what's the motivation for taking this fight? Because I'd love to know, and it would actually um, give me a lot more of a clear idea of who I wanted to pick in this matchup. But that's not going to happen. So right now, I'm going to have to go with what I've seen from both fighters recently, and that's going to lead me to pick Manan Fiorot to win by a unanimous decision. She'll be happy in that French setting. But moving on though, we've just got a few smaller fight announcements. Cub Swanson versus Hakeem Dawodu, August 12th. That's the RDA versus Luke fight night in the Apex. I'm going to be picking Hakeem Dawodu in this matchup. Cub Swanson coming off that brutal leg injury, brutal leg TKO down at bantamweight. Glad to see that he's moving up to featherweight, but I think that Cub Swanson is past his point of fighting for titles, past his point of having competitive fights with some of the best in the lighter weight classes. And I think he's going to lose this fight. I'd love to say that he would win, and even if he loses, I'd love to say that he doesn't get finished. But I just see Hakeem Dawodu as a guy who's more hungry, younger in his career, um, chasing to be at the top of the division. Whether I think he's going to make it there is a different story. I would say no, but still, when you're fighting a guy who's, I don't know how old Cub Swanson is, he's in his late 30s for sure. Let me just check that for you guys. Um, Cub Swanson is, bro, Big Marcel, bro, get your fucking shit together. He's not giving us the age. Sorry, date of birth. November 1983. What's that? 93. Oh, is that 40? That's 40. What the fuck? He's 40 years of age. That's atrocious. Wait, I'm not tripping here. 93, 03, 13, 20. He's 40. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely picking Hakeem Dawodu in this matchup. He's when how old's that? Oh 01 he's 30, 32, 32 to 40. He's had some good wins. Fought beat Mike Trezano, beat Julio Arce, beat Zubaira Takugov. Cub Swanson really not got any recent wins. Obviously, he's beat the likes of Jeremy Stevens, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, but you can look at his record. Those fights were not recent, and you know how I know that? Because Jeremy Stevens not in the organization, and Poirier and Oliveira are up at lightweight and haven't lost to anyone not named Islam Makhachev or Khabib Nurmagomedov in the last like 6 years. But regardless, I just don't think Cub's winning this matchup. He's going to be old. He's going to be slow. He's going to be fragile. He's going to be susceptible to leg kicks. And I just think Hakeem Dawodu is going to TKO him. I think he'll land a big shot. And Cub Swanson's not going to have that grit that he would have had in his 30s or his 20s when he was fighting some of the best in the division. So I'm picking to lose this matchup. But anyway, moving on. Brady Heistand versus Damon Blackshear. When is that fight? That fight is on the, bear with me, August 12th as well. August 12th, so same as that, Cub Swanson fight. I'm going to be picking Damon Blackshear in this matchup. Coming off a really impressive win over Luan Lacerda, a few weeks ago. Looked really good in that fight, got a finish, stifled the grappling of Luan Lacerda. Brady Heistand has looked good in his fights. 2-1 in the UFC. Beat Fernie Garcia. Beat Dana Baccarel. So some decent wins. But Damon Blackshear, I'm looking at him, and I love that Luan Serta win. Luan Serta was actually somewhat favoured in that matchup. A lot of people were picking him to win. But Blackshear looked really good in that matchup. I think he's really evolved on the feet. He's looking a lot crisper, a lot more dangerous on the feet, and I think he's going to win this fight. Maybe by a TKO, maybe by decision. I'll have to see how I'm feeling when we get around to this fight. Um, just gonna check. Do we have any more? Obviously, Kai vs Albazi is now official. I talked about it in my last video, um, and that was basically just off confirmed. It is now official. Obviously, you can go check out my previous previous fight announcements video for my prediction on that matchup. But Jafel Filho versus Daniel Barez. That's for London. That's a replacement fight. I'm going to be picking Jafel Filho. He looked good in his last fight, in his debut, even though he did lose. But even outside the UFC, he's got a win over Vinicius Salvador, who is a good fighter in his own right. I'm not tripping here. He fucking fought Makayev, didn't he? Jafel Filho. Let me check. I could be wrong there. Maybe I'm getting really confused. I don't. Flyweight. Yeah, he fought Makayev. I swear. Um, loss. Lost Makayev, yeah. And he looked really good in that matchup. He looked really good in that fight against Makayev. Was winning that fight, had him in a fucking knee bar, bending his knee fucking like that, some Diego Lopez style against Movzar. Um, and so yeah, I'm gonna be picking him to win this fight. Whoever he's fighting, who the fuck's he fighting? Daniel Barez. Um, is he making his debut? He is. Notable wins, no one that I've heard of. So, 16-5, not a really impressive record. Philo's 14-3. Um, that Makayev fight though just looked really good. And if you're high on Makayev as a prospect and you think Makayev's going to make the top 10 or the top 5 or be a champion, then you got to say Philo's going to be pretty close with him and follow him to that top of the flyweight division. So I'll pick him to win this fight by probably a decision because it's flyweight. I don't know much about Barez. He could be shit and he could get finished, or he could be really good. We don't know. But anyway, Jafel Filho to win this matchup. That's for London, July 22nd. One more. We have got Edgar Chairez versus Tatsuro Taira. Tatsuro, Taira. I'm going to be picking Tatsuro Taira in this matchup. That's a really pleasant fight announcement, pleasant surprise. That's for July 8th. So that's actually for next week's card, UFC 290 of Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. So another really good fight on that card. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that UFC 290 card has 15 fights on it now, which is crazy. Really stacking that international fight week, July 8th. Got some really good matchups on that card. July, let me just check. I'm pretty sure it has. I do have a board of all the fight announcements just to let you guys know, but I'm currently on the other side of my room, so I'm not going to go and get it. But I'm pretty sure that that does have 15 fights on there. July 8th, 2023. Let me just check my badness. So 5 fights on the main card as per usual. Prelims. 4 fights on the prelims, so that's 9. 1, 2, 3. So that's 12. I could actually no, I think I might be off here. Maybe it's just 14. Never mind. Da 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 da. Come on, shirt. Where's Sherdog? Here you go, Sherdog. Um, anyway, 14 fights still really good. Tatsuro Taira coming off a fight cancellation against Clayton Rodriguez, who's a rat because he missed weight. And we don't like weight misses. But Tatsuro Taira before that had a really good win. I'm picking him to win this fight if I didn't say that already. Let me just check. Let me just check. Let me just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, I'm weird. Why did I think there was 15? Anyway, 14 fights, stacked international fight week. Definitely going to be making a prediction video for that. But yeah, Tatsuro Taira looked good in his last performance, got a finish. This guy, Edgar Chairez, making his UFC debut. Pretty big guy from what I hear. This fight is at a catch weight of 130 pounds, so that could favour the bigger man there. But I just think Tatsuro Taira is technically much superior, and I think he's going to win this fight by submission, as he has recently in his last few fights. So, that is the end of the fight announcements, guys. Up at 11:30, just recording this video, because I wanted to. I was gonna make one the other day, but then I just waited, and now Shavkat vs Gastelum is a really good fight, so I had to make a fight announcement video for that. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video. I got something planned, probably tomorrow or the day after. I've got a June UFC recap, the month of June. Gonna be going over all of that and all the highlights, so that'll be cool. But anyway, see you guys.